What's up guys, it's F1 Soze here, and today I'm reviewing the Austrian Grand Prix. Now I got the privilege to actually watch the Austrian Grand Prix in the Red Bull facilities at the Red Bull factory, and oh my gosh, I was mesmerized. First of all, I've never been so up close to all of those F1 cars before. It was an amazing experience. Thank you so much for the invite. I really appreciate it. It was great to see them. The cars are so big. Cars are really big, and you can see this how they've grown over the years. They've become pretty huge nowadays. But then, whilst that's being said, the cockpits are so small and they're so narrow. I really don't understand how F1 drivers have managed to not only fit in there, but then also control the car. Honestly, it's crazy for me. I don't understand it, but it's not my job to understand it. I just watch the races and enjoy it. But what an experience it was. You had the sim racing as well, which is great. I had a great go at that. I realized I'm not going to be an F1 driver anytime soon, but it was great fun nonetheless. There were also the trophy room. Oh wow, that trophy room was mesmerizing. I was in awe with how many trophies there were. Oh man, I can't count how many there were, but it was amazing to see. And now they've got another one to add as Verstappen finished P2 in the Austrian Grand Prix. And while we were watching the Grand Prix, we had so many different data points all spread out on the big screen. So there was a lot of information to take in, and it was a great race to watch. But it was a race that was dominated by Russell. Should he have started on pole? Now that is controversial after Verstappen did crash in qualifying Q3 on turn 9. And then that is when Russell, after that crash, whilst there was still yellow flags on his dash and yellow flags on the signboards, he still put in his personal best, which was his pole sitting lap. Now, in my eyes, I believe that there should have been a further reduction in pace, because from what I've seen, he actually reached the apex at a similar speed to what Verstappen did when he crashed. So can we really say that that was a reduction in speed, and he actually did slow down before getting into that corner? Because yes, there was liftoff. He did lift off earlier than you normally would, but the speed he was taking in nonetheless negates that, to be fair, because if I'm going at 220 miles per hour and then I slow down to 180 miles per hour, and the corner I'm meant to be taking, I take it 180, whereas like I don't see that as enough, especially when we're talking about danger. It's just not. Obviously those numbers are fabricated, that's not what actually happened, but that's just an example. I don't think it should have stood, and to say that he lifted off enough is a qualitative argument, and you can't really use that across the board unilaterally to say, yes, if there is a yellow flag, you need to reduce your pace by this much. And I believe it should be compared to your best lap so far. You need to reduce your final sector time by a certain percentage compared to your best lap time. And that, I think, would be the best, because you shouldn't be able to still put in a personal best when there are waved yellows, because there's clear danger or something you need to look out for on track. So why they let it stand, I'm not too sure. However, after that, on Sunday, there are absolutely no arguments at all. Russell dominated that race. He, from the very start, lap 1, put out a bit of a gap, and then he just continued to bridge that gap. He just extended. And Verstappen did keep him honest. Verstappen kept him honest. And there were times as well where Verstappen was closing in. But then strategy and pace, it didn't really come together for Verstappen to really fight and put on that challenge to Russell. He got closer towards the end, but then Antonelli also got really close to Verstappen, so Verstappen was probably been doing more defensive work in that very last 2 laps of the race. But take nothing away from Russell. He done exactly what he needed to do, exactly what I said he needed to do as well, because I said after the Barcelona Grand Prix that he wasn't a title contender. That after that showing in the Barcelona Grand Prix that he really needed to step it up. Otherwise, he would have been left in the dust, and those rumors circulating would have been even louder. The saxophones would have gotten louder if he didn't perform in the Austrian Grand Prix. And boy, did he manage to do that. He's now P2 in the he's now P2 in the Drivers' Championship. He's now helped Mercedes put a 100-point gap in the Constructors' Championship. And he's also closed the gap on Kimi in that Driving Championship. And most importantly, he's scuppered the momentum of Kimi Antonelli. Now, Kimi Antonelli's gone from a DNF to a P3. Kimi Antonelli didn't have the pace to match Russell all race. He was complaining about brake issues, and there was at one point where one brake was hotter than the other, so it didn't really help. Fair enough, but nonetheless, George Russell's performance showed that he does have it in him to continue to win races, to continue to fight at the front, and to continue to be that championship contender that Mercedes really wanted, which then helps to put to bed some of the rumors that have been circulating about whether his seat is really at risk. Is Verstappen the next Mercedes driver? Is Verstappen the next McLaren driver? We're hearing a lot of stuff about where Verstappen might go, but for now, it's being put to bed by George Russell continuing to perform. He's going to want to keep this momentum going for Silverstone, continue to close the gap on Kimi and that Drivers' Championship, and show out to his home fans. He doesn't get as much love as the other British drivers like Lando Norris. Lando Norris got a grandstand before he even won a race there. Ollie Behrman, obviously he's new there, but he still gets quite a lot of love in comparison to George Russell, and I don't really know why. But George Russell is going to want to show his fans and show the support from the British crowd, supporters from the British crowd, that he is going to compete this season. So I'm really, really looking forward to the Silverstone Grand Prix. There are a lot of storylines that are going to come together there, and I can't wait to see it. P2 though, P2 was Max Verstappen. Coming off the back of that crash in qualifying, his confidence is never damaged. It's never knocked. From P5, he finished P2. He kept George Russell honest throughout the whole race. George Russell never had that huge 15, 20-second gap where he can rest. No. George Russell he continuously had Verstappen there or thereabouts. The strategy call from Red Bull could have been a little bit better. I wasn't happy that they brought him in so early in that second stint. He was really closing the gap on George Russell, and then they pitted him right when he was about a second and a half, 2 seconds behind, which it kind of gave George Russell some breathing room and helped him relax a little bit, which then helped George Russell re-extend that lead again. And it was just a bit too much for Verstappen to try and close down and compete for that win. But it showed that the Red Bull upgrades worked. That Red Bull looked light on its feet. It's no longer the fat, overweight Red Bull that we saw in Melbourne. Obviously, they've had the best engine for sure, but now the chassis is matching. Now they're really able to show why they have won so many Constructors' Championship. And might I say, looking in that trophy room, you see exactly why they are where they are, and how they managed to have some of the best engineers in the world, man. Honestly, it was so good to see that Red Bull really, really back up to its best and competing towards the front. Hajar in P6 as well. It was solid from him, a great showing. That second driver's seat in Red Bull now really being in the points time and time again. He wasn't necessarily fighting for that podium place, but he's bringing in enough points to help the constructors fight. It's no longer solely Max Verstappen bringing in all of those points. They now have the second driver who's really, really competent and really aggressive and a great driver. So credit to Hajar, another solid weekend. He'd want to keep the momentum going and probably build on this in Silverstone and probably try and compete closer to Max and closer for those podium places. It was a great showing. People who it wasn't a great showing for though, Ferrari. Ferrari did not have it at all. They had such a great qualifying. It was Saturday, P2 for Leclerc, P3 for Lewis Hamilton. We were like, oh yes, the ADUO engine upgrades really seem to be working. They look there and thereabouts with Mercedes to fight for that podium and fight for that race win. But as soon as Sunday came, it was the complete opposite. They just went backwards. They had no pace. They were extremely slow on that hard tire. Lewis Hamilton went for a daring 3-stop and it didn't work. It didn't come to fruition. Their engine, they were just off the pace whole race. Lewis Hamilton ended up finishing P5. Bear in mind, he started P3. Leclerc finished P8. Bear in mind, he started P2. They just went backwards and they had no answer for any of the teams. Is this going to be was this a blip? Is this a dampening their momentum and they're just going to pick it back up for Silverstone? Or is this a real showing of their ADUO engine upgrades didn't work and they have all this work to do yet again? Remains to be seen. I think Silverstone, as I said before, Silverstone is going to be a great race in terms of understanding how competitive all four of these teams are. Because I think Mercedes, obviously, they'll have their point to prove as they want to continue being the best of the best in the field. Red Bull, they've just brought that amazing package. They're going to want to compete and show that they're ready for that race victory. This Ferrari upgrade, is it a problem? Is it working for them? Or is this a real showing of how far off they really are and how much work is really they've got to do? Can Lewis and Leclerc really step it up and not have another calamitous race as they did this weekend? Because honestly, if they have another showing like this, there's no way that we can talk about championship contenders. Honestly, it just wasn't it. They now 100 points off in the constructors in P2, and Red Bull will be knocking on that door very, very soon if Ferrari do not get their act together and get those upgrades and that performance in that car once again to compete as strongly as they did in Barcelona. And we were thinking maybe it was the heat that was a problem for the Mercedes, but no, it's not. That's not the issue. And maybe they fixed that beforehand, so it's no longer an issue. But it's not something that Ferrari can maybe try and play on. McLaren are also another team who they were just nowhere, to be fair. They were faster than the Ferraris for sure. Piastri outperformed Norris, so Piastri might take some confidence from this race. Finished P4. He finished P4 and Norris finished in P7. So it was a solid. They weren't fighting for the podium, so it wasn't like he finished P4 and it was only a couple of seconds off Antonelli. Piastri wasn't competing in that. It was basically there were basically three races in fact. There were the podium race, so George Russell, Verstappen, Antonelli. Then there was race 2, which was Oscar Piastri, Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc. That was another group of 4, and then you had the best of the rest, which was literally all the other teams: Racing Bulls, Alpine, Williams, Cadillac, Haas, Audi. Those were that's always the best of the rest. So McLaren just had no pace. They in qualifying, they were there and thereabouts, but it wasn't worrying. It wasn't a sign of Mercedes and Red Bull really need to look behind them because McLaren are coming. It was none of that. They were just better than the rest of the pack. And throughout the race, again, Norris had nothing to show. He again beat Leclerc, outpaced Leclerc for sure, but he wasn't competitive enough to be pushing forward. Same with Oscar. They would want a big Silverstone. Whether they've got upgrades to bring, I'm not sure. We'll probably see during the week more news about that. But this also now raises the question as to those rumors that have been circulating about Verstappen potentially joining McLaren. Would he really want to be joining McLaren when they look like they're on the decline, whilst Red Bull look like they're on the up? I don't think so. I think he'd probably be very happy where he is. He can see that the trajectory that Red Bull are on right now is upwards. He can see that they're now competing for race wins, competing for that title, which they're going to want to, as if they can keep on putting these solid performances in. And I see no reason why he'd want to leave that and join McLaren, who currently, they seem just marooned in third, fourth. They don't seem like they have anything to fight for a race win as of yet. Again, maybe there will be some more upgrades. Maybe they'll bring something for Silverstone, because obviously Lando Norris's home race, it's McLaren's home race essentially as well. So they are going to want to put on a big performance. So, but whether they can, whether they'll have that pace and that those upgrades will come to fruition, remains to be seen. I'm eager for it though. I always love that Silverstone race, and this is going to be no different. It's going to have so much drama and so many questions, and controversial storylines will be answered during this race weekend. Whilst more will be brought up, there will definitely be more controversial moments, or more title defining moments from that race alone. Maybe the turn of momentum that George Russell needs to really push on for that title. Maybe this becomes the blip. This is the recovery from the blip that Antonelli was having, and he now gets back on that top spot. Maybe it's Max Verstappen, who now, after his P2, decides to get one better and show that he's actually back in that title fight. So there are a lot of things that will be answered during that Silverstone race. Another team who are going to want to have another solid performance and deliver the momentum that they've been carrying are Racing Bulls. Another double points finish. Now, sitting in P6 in the Constructors' Championship behind Alpine, but slowly closing the gap. And if they keep on racing as they are, as in you've always got the top four teams who are going to normally take those top 8 places. So if you're going to continuously beat 9th and 10th and continuously get those double points finishes, you're always in a shout to become that best of the rest. And that's exactly what our Racing Bulls are doing. Another strong showing from them. Lindblad and Lawson both picking up points in a great race for them. Obviously, it's Racing Bulls, Red Bull, home race, Austria. So big performance from them. Congratulations. And they'll want to keep that going for the Silverstone Grand Prix. Whether they can or not remains to be seen. Alpine, they're struggling a little bit. It's not, well, this race anyway, they weren't there. Bortoleto and Hulkenberg for Audi were 11th and 12th. I honestly, I feel so bad for Hulkenberg right now. He's always there and thereabouts, outside of the top 10, but he's yet to pick up a racing point this season, 2026. We're almost at July and he's still not picked up a point. It's unfortunate. Whether this may be his final season remains to be seen. I honestly think he has no reason to go beyond this. I've heard that he's not really happy with the environment that Audi have delivered. I don't think it's really for him. So he may be moving on after this. And he's already achieved his podium last season, which was probably the best that he was really going to achieve realistically in Formula One, not with all of the teams that he's been at. And he's achieved that podium. So he can honestly say he's been at that pinnacle of Formula One. And for him if he decides to hang up his boots, I don't blame him. And he can look back and it's an illustrious career with one podium, but so many brilliant seasons. Do we think the Ferrari are having a blip, or do we think that they can carry on the momentum from Barcelona and deliver that in Silverstone? Do you think that they can really show that their packages and their upgrades are delivering, and that the strategy calls were just a real problem and in Austria? Or is Austria a real showing of how fast Ferrari are? Will Max Verstappen stay at Red Bull after seeing how promising that Austrian Grand Prix was? Or is that not enough? Me personally, as I said before, I think that he's not going to turn his head, especially at the end of this season, with the way that Red Bull are currently looking. with the positive, in going in a positive direction for sure. I'm not too sure that he'd want to leave that just yet to go into a new environment. But hey, silly season's upon us. Anything can happen. I will never say never, but it's highly doubtful at this moment in time. Will Lawson keep his Racing Bull seat? Now, that is a question that I've been reading a lot about, because I'm seeing that Racing Bulls may potentially look to move him on, because I don't think that they want him to replace Hadjar at that top Red Bull seat. And if Max Verstappen stays for another season, they'll have no reason to really keep Lawson at the Racing Bulls team, when obviously the Racing Bulls seats are really there to just help mold the driver to be ready for the Red Bull seat. And if they're not going to push them to the Red Bull seat, then they have no reason really staying in the Red Bull Racing Bull den. So maybe it might open the door for another second driver, such as Solov, who's been really delivering in F2 so far. Maybe once he gets his super license points, he'll be eligible to become that new Racing Bull driver. But all remains to be seen. We'll see how Racing Bulls continue to perform, and whether they can even finish higher than 9th and 10th in the British Grand Prix, because that'll be great for them, and that'll be a great showing for Lawson, especially to show that he deserves to keep his seat or attract interest from someone else in Formula One. I will be doing a race preview for that British Grand Prix during the week, so be sure to make sure you look at my page, look at my YouTube, my TikTok, Insta, all of them, and Facebook, all of them, F1 Soze. Like, follow, subscribe, comment, anything. All your interactions are very much appreciated. The big community, let's keep it going, let's keep it growing, and let's take care of each other.